over there. Alrighty, well thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it. I know there's a couple new people in here, so today we'll be talking about open houses. You know, when people think of real estate, we think about open houses, so it's a very fundamental thing for us as agents to learn how to do and how to do well, right? So we'll just kind of jump into it. Again, very fundamental. We're going to talk about this very in depth, but I just wanted to define it. If there's anybody watching that's maybe a realtor that's been licensed for a month or two, open houses are kind of like TV, right? You're going to be waiting in a house that's listed for sale, and we are going to be, showing people around, answering any questions they might have about the house, and just seeing what we can do to help them out, right? A lot of people are looky-loos, neighbors, people looking to transact, so trying to buy and sell. But that's really what it is. Fundamentally, we're just going to be sitting in a house with it unlocked and waiting for people to come in and then talking to them, right? So what is an open house for? You might think, okay, well, it's a listed house, advertised for sale. The open house is trying to sell the house. Well, it might, there always is the chance that someone could come in and love the house enough to write an offer on it. But the reality is that an open house is actually not really to sell the house, right? It happens, but it's a small percentage of times that it does happen. And it's also not to bring business to the listing agent unless you happen to be the listing agent, right? The open house is for the agent sitting in the open house to find more leads and more clients, right? It's all about bringing in business to the agent sitting in the open house. So a lot of sellers will want open houses held, and we're happy to do it because it doesn't really sell their house, but it does help us, find new relationships and new people to sell to. It's also for getting to know the neighborhood. So if you're into, circle prospecting or targeting a geographic area for business, it's terrific for that. And it's also great for marketing too, right? You can be known as an open house realtor, right? So your goal with the open house is all about this experience, right? So when I'm orchestrating an open house, I'm thinking about the experience, the people parking down the street, walking into the house. As they walk through the house, I want that experience to be catered to make them comfortable with me as the broker, right? So does the house smell good, right? We've all been in stinky houses. It's not fun. Is it clean? Is it put together? Does it show well? Then you as the broker, are you friendly, right? Are you relational to them, or are you, salesy? I put music on. I don't want awkward silences, right? So everything is catered to make it a very comfortable environment, if that makes sense. So I put essential components to a fire open house. I have 3 that I always think about when I'm doing an open house. I think that there's 3 really important things for setting up an open house and making it successful. And first off, it starts with picking a solid house to do an open house on, right? I can't tell you how many houses I've sat an open house for, and you're sitting there and you're waiting and nobody comes, right? And 3 hours, 4 hours in this house, you're sitting waiting for people to come in so you can talk to them, and nobody shows up, right? So I have some rules. Obviously there's some flexibility here, but generally for me, I only want to do an open house on a new house on the market, or a home that's had a price reduction, and I'm looking for 3 weeks or a month or less on market, right? So what I don't want to do is do an open house on a house that's been listed for 3 months with no price reductions, right? Because we can assume at that point, we call them stale or stagnant listing, right? Everybody who's maybe considered that house as a potential option for them has probably already seen it if they wanted to. So you're just gonna sit there by yourself. So for me, new house, price reduced, 3 weeks to a month on market or less, right, are the houses that we want to kind of pick out. And then I also put no trash can houses either. So I want high quality houses. I don't want fixer-uppers for my open houses. And I also want them to be around the median price point here in Colorado Springs. So I don't, it would be good to do, say, a luxury open house or an open house on a $180,000 condo, but for your time and what it's worth, you're going to find the most success by picking a house that's around that 500,000, give or take a couple 100,000, right? That's where the majority of people are looking to transact and are capable of buying. So number two, the second component to making this a really successful use of your time would be just adequate exposure. So we need to make sure that the open house is advertised and marketed. And so the biggest and best way we can do that is just going to be through the MLS. So right when we list the house, it's going to go in the MLS. And in the MLS, we have a little field we can schedule an open house, and that will syndicate to everything, Realtor.com, Zillow. So the MLS is going to be the key, part of exposure and marketing. Most people are looking at properties online. That's where the majority of people see properties, and so we need to make sure that that's put in the MLS, right? Second would be signs. I put literally everywhere. They're just as important as the MLS. I will go through in a second, my breakdown of where people come from, how they hear about the open house. But signs are just as important, right? We get tons of people that are maybe looking to transact but haven't really gone to that next step of talking to a realtor or a lender. And they're driving home and they see a sign and then they quick turn and they want to go stop by the open house. So signs will be another terrific way to get exposure on the open house, right? Connecting with neighbors is important. I do this less as I get busier, but calling them, right? We can pull lists from title companies of neighbors and call them. We can go door to door. We can send out flyers. We can do targeted advertising. All of those things just to get to know the people around the house that's listed for sale, because those people might be looking to transact or know somebody looking to move into the area. And then the last point there, social media is great. I honestly think it's a lot less important than some of those other ones. Word of mouth is great, so other realtors that that might have clients. But yeah, it's all about getting the word out, right? And I'll show you in a second how I make sure I'm doing all of that every single time. Then the third point I would say is the right execution. So we're gonna have a really great house, right? It'll be terrific. It'll be a great package. People are interested in the house. We'll put it everywhere through the exposure, right? So it'll be in the MLS and Zillow. And then once they get to the house, we need to make sure it's a good experience, right? So we're gonna make sure that it's at a time where people are available. I found the weekend, 11 to 2, is perfect. People are getting out of church. It's not too early. They're not asleep. That gives them time to sleep in. It's around that lunchtime, so people are driving places, maybe going to lunch. So I found my attendance is best when it's a Saturday or Sunday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's also not super long, so if it's, if it's not a super busy open house, you're not stuck there for 6 hours, right? Part of the right execution is just making sure you have all the right materials. So I need flyers, MLS sheets, snacks, Bluetooth speakers. I have a full list later. I'll walk you through all of that. And then also, part of the right execution is knowing what you're going to say to these people, right? So you'll have the door open. You'll be waiting for people to come. They walk in the door. What do you say to them, right? We'll go through that in a second. But just again, catering this experience to make it as seamless for these people as possible, I think is very important. These people are walking in off the street, and there's this salesperson, waiting for them at the door of this house. We need to make sure they're comfortable with us and ready to, maybe take the next step and sit down with you and talk about buying. Okay, so the right listing, we talked about this a bit earlier. I always start with my listings first. So when I'm doing my listing presentations, non-negotiably, we're gonna do an open house the first weekend on market. That's part of my value proposition. They think it's great because their house is getting exposure, but we now know, right, that this is for us to get business, not to maybe sell that house, even though it does happen. So we'll start with your listings. Then I would say the second best option would be asking people around the office. So helping anybody out, here at Realty One Group that might have a house that's new on the market, or they just reduced the price. That would be my second best bet, right? Then you're gonna make friends as a realtor if you're a newer agent. And a lot of those people will be at other brokerages. So say, you have a day in your calendar, you want to host an open house. You can't find anything at the office that's a good fit for you. You can start asking around and trying to find other people you might know that you can help out with an open house. Then the fourth option, which would be maybe not the most ideal, but still great, would be looking online. So Facebook has been a terrific place for me to find open houses to host. You could also look at the MLS, right? So say the house, down the street from you goes on the market and it's sitting there a couple days and no open house is scheduled, but you live just right down the street. Call the listing agent, see if they want an open house, right? They're not going to be upset about more exposure on their listing, and it gives you the opportunity to be like, hey, I'm a real estate agent, I live down the street, it's a great area, what can I do to help out? So for me, the Pikes Peak Real Estate Professional Mastermind on Facebook has been like my best open house source, so my best place of where I find open houses. So I would post, I'd be looking on a certain day, like a Saturday or Sunday. So I would post on that Facebook group. I'd be like, hey, I'm looking to host an open house on this day, and then I'd walk them through what I do to market the house, and people would just flood the comments with houses that they wanted held open. And so through that, I met a couple agents that were doing, quite a few houses every single month, and so they'd call me, right? I do such a good job with the open houses. They put something on the market, and they'd call me, right? They'd be like, hey, I got a new one coming next week. Can I book you down for a Saturday open house? And I'd be like, yes, absolutely. Sign me up. This sounds great. And yeah, again, it's a win-win for everybody, right? They get more exposure on their listings, you get more leads, and it's just a great thing, right? So I think that's about it. As far as I kind of alluded to this earlier, so there's no market data here. I haven't done any research, but I've held an open house every weekend for at least in 2022 and 2023. I did at least between those 2 years, 150 open houses. And from my observations, I would say about 30% of people attending an open house will hear about it from their realtor. So you'll always have, realtors coming in with clients instead of a showing, right? It's easier to go to an open house. Another 30% will find about it online. So they'll see it on Zillow or Realtor.com, and they'll think it looks terrific from the pictures, and so they'll stop by. Another third or 30% will be from the signs. So if you do a good job with the signs, you'll have people driving and be like, hey, this is a great neighborhood. Oh, look, an open house, let's swing by. So they'll pull over, they'll park, and then they'll get out. And then roughly another 11% will be kind of those miscellaneous others. So you'll have, people walking their dog who see the open house and they want to go in. You'll have neighbors that call their aunts and uncles and be like, hey, the house next to me is for sale. I think you should buy it. You should come in, right? So all of those will fall into the other. But generally it's going to be, 30% realtor, 30% online, 30% signs. And so we can't control the realtors, right? We can't control the people with clients that might have, clients that could be a good fit for the house, but we can control the signs and the online presence, right? Carrie. Absolutely, yeah. So we could market to realtors to increase that as well. But for me, if it was my listing, maybe I want to do that because I would like to sell my listing, right? But I'm going to focus on the signs and the online presence if I'm hosting an open house and it's not my listing, because I'm sitting there to find buyers, right? And to find buyers for the house would be ideal, but I'm looking for new clients, right? And so, yes, Carrie, that would be great if it was your house. I would, you can definitely market to realtors, and there's lots of ways to do that. But I'm going to focus, mainly on signs and online when I'm trying to find new people to sell houses to, right? So talking about signs, you need a crap ton of signs. One of the biggest mistakes I see about signage is that people will put 3 signs out, and they'll say, okay, looks good. I put one on the street, and I think a lot of people are going to come. I would say a minimum of 10 signs would be that's not that many signs, right? 10 signs is not that many. I'm aiming for 30 plus signs if I can do it. I see signs as an investment, so you can find them cheap online, you can order them. Try not to steal the office signs because we have a limited amount. But I think that signs are a terrific thing. Again, from my observation, that's going to be roughly 30% of your attendance will come from those signs. So we're going to want a lot of those out there. I have a method for installing signs, right? People need time to make a decision when they're driving. So putting one on the corner right before turn isn't going to work, right? They're going to see it and they're going to drive by it, and then they're not going to turn around, right? So we want to place signs far out from a turn to give people time to think about, should I pull over? Okay, yeah, I should do it. And they should be very visible too, right? So I'll show you here. This is a screenshot of our office here, and then all of these red dots are things that I just like penciled in. If I was doing an open house and this was a house, and this is what the map looked like, this is where I would put signs, right? So you're driving down Voyager, it's a busy road. I would start signs way, way, way down, down the street. And I'd do like 4, because as you're driving, you see open house, open house, open house. Okay, maybe I should turn, right? Maybe I should turn into there. Same thing here with the other way, southbound on Voyager. I'd put a ton of signs starting very far out, right? Because again, it takes people time to make that decision. You want to give them the opportunity to pull over. So generally, how I think about it is that we're going to go out to these busy roads like Voyager, 2 or 3 lane roads with stoplights, and then once they turn into a little less busy road, generally speaking, I think I've captured them at that point. So if they've decided on Voyager they're going to stop by the open house, it's a little less important to have a ton of signs here, but we still want to give the opportunity for people to make that decision to turn, right? So say someone is driving north on Spectrum Loop, I want them to see 3 signs to turn into the parking lot, so they have that opportunity to go. So here is going to be that stop sign that we have out by the office. Anytime there's a stop sign or an intersection, we need to put signs so they know where they're going, right? And then outside of the house, or in this case, the office, I like to do the flags because I think the visibility there is much greater with the signs. So I'll do more signs and flags, right outside. So here's my house. Here was like my real world example, and I think it's a little smaller, so hopefully you can see it. So my house is here. It's on a cul-de-sac. And so this is Research Parkway. So if I was doing an open house at my house, I would want to go all the way out to Research. It's a 3-lane road, right? Because that's where the most opportunity is going to be for people to see those signs. So this, I would put 4 signs on each side of Research going out. I don't know how far that would be, a quarter mile, maybe, I don't know, probably not that much. But I would do 4 signs and maybe even a flag, out on Research, because we're going to have all that traffic going. We need people to see those signs and have the opportunity to make a decision, right? Then from Research, let's say they're driving, they see a sign, they say, oh, we've got time, let's go stop at the open house. They'll make a turn onto Somerset, and then as they go down Somerset, these are stop sign intersections. So on the stop sign intersections, we have quite a bit of traffic going on Parliament and on Somerset. So I would do 4 signs there, right? So when people stop at the stop sign, they say, oh, cool, an open house, let's pull over, So they'll go down Somerset, again, another intersection. All of the signs here are stop sign intersections. But yeah, it'll give them time to turn. They'll turn on my street, another intersection. They'll go all the way up and they'll see the flag and whoops, and the sign here, and then they'll be at the house, right? So it all starts from like collecting people from the busiest road you can find in proximity to the house. In my case, it would be Research. In the case of the office, it would be Voyager. But looking at a map and making a plan from there of where you're going to put the signs is important. And then you'll go in the morning and you'll set them up. So this is what I put as like my ideal sign. It's just some stock photo, but ideally they would be a bright color. So I like red. I think red is the most eye-catching, and usually we're putting these in rocks or grass, so it's going to have contrast. All of them need to have a directional arrow, so people need to know where they're turning. And then something eye-catching, to give life to the sign. Because some people will put signs out the night before and then you don't know if there's an open house. So on a couple of the signs, when I set up signs, I'll put open houses or those wind catchers, those pinwheels that catch the wind and spin. I'll stick those on the top, and usually I'll do it, if we're looking at the map, I would do the balloons on, say, this one and maybe this one, or just, the one at the end. Doesn't have to be on all of them, that would be quite a bit. But again, it's a little extra, it's a little, but it makes it a lot more visible and a lot less stagnant, right? It gives it more life. And then ideally for me, they would be easy to install, to remove, and to carry. Installing signs in the winter is not fun, so much so that I basically don't do open houses in the winter when the ground's frozen, just because it's so annoying. So if anyone knows tier lists, I thought it'd be funny to do this. So this is like a tier list. So at the top we have the best, and then at the bottom we have the worst. So the worst signs ever are going to be the ones that you get from Home Depot. These are like 12 inches by 4 inches tall. I put that they're awful because they really are. They're super cheap. They're not very visible. They're fine in a pinch, but if I had a pick, I wouldn't do those, just because they're so small. And based on my criteria for an ideal sign, that would not be my top pick. I put much higher up would be the A-frame signs that we have at the office. These are the best signs you'll ever have. The only issue with these signs is that they're so big and they're so heavy. And so because I like so many signs for my open houses, I can't carry 30 of those in my trunk, right? That's not realistic. In an ideal situation, I would, but just because of the size and the bulk to them, they wouldn't be my top pick just because of that. I hate to say it, but these are the generic ones that have the metal stake that we put in the ground. They're super cheap, they're super light, they don't take up too much space. I think of them as like disposable because you'll use them a handful of times and they'll be all bent up and in terrible shape. And they're harder to install, but just because of the price and the amount that we can carry in our trunks, I think those are the best you're gonna do. So what I will usually do is I'll have a mixture between the big ones and the small ones. And then the big ones I'll save for, say rocks or places where it's harder to stake them in. And then I'll usually put my balloons on the big ones too, because those are the nicest ones. And then these ones, are a lot more disposable. I'll just throw them wherever. I don't care if they get bent up or thrown over. And then this was too big to put a picture in. This is like an open house flag. We have, it would be about that size as that Realty One Group flag there. You can get them smaller, but those are terrific to put outside the house or, a busy intersection like Research, because you can't miss it, right? Everybody will see that.
Hey Benji.
Yeah.
So something I think you could do to mix these up
Sure.
is a combination. So
Yeah.
sign companies we all use. They'll make the cardboard ones at the top. They'll make them kind of brand new to you. It's cheaper than the A-frame.
Correct. Yep.
Like $55 a piece.
Yeah.
I know when we've done stuff for like photos for Santa and things like that, you can typically get a customized cardboard one for, I'd say about $50 a sign.
It's not bad.
It might be worth it only because if they're branded in some colors and designs, but that's part of your marketing budget.
Absolutely.
And they're going to look consistent when you've got to change the styles for rocks.
Correct.
And yet, and then they kick into that branding. So like all of our
Correct.
stuff is black, but Owen and I ordered some just for ourselves last year. The options. I'm thinking maybe gold because red doesn't fit my branding, right? Gold might catch your eye a little bit more.
Yeah. There's a ton of flexibility there, and I think that.
That's what I'm thinking. You get 15 or 20 of the paper ones, and then you got a good 10 or so that are.
That would, correct. I think that would be the ideal situation would be having both for different,
Because the A-frame ones you can also order the flags, so I quit using balloons years ago because
Correct.
some days they'll go flat and they'll look here.
Flags were great, yeah.
And so the little flags with your branding and stuff also, you can put those on the A-frames and they can actually be on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Flags are awesome. So, yes.
I also carry a drill with a long drill to go into the ground because it's hard here.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get. I have a technique too. I do have a technique. I will share with you in a second. There's no right or wrong way to do it with what signs you use. I like these ones because they're super cheap. You know, you can buy them in bulk and they're pretty disposable. But yeah, the ideal situation would be having branded signs for yourself that are not cheap, right? Like these ones that we have at the office, like that'll last forever, right? If you take care of it. So mix it up and, you know, find what you want. But I think at least for starting, you know, find whatever's cheap and you can get a lot of, right, would be my advice. So yeah, just touching on online presence again, the biggest thing you can do is make sure that the open house is scheduled in the MLS. If you are not the listing agent, you need to have the listing agent go into their account and do that for you. But that's, you know, this syndicates to all of the consumer websites that we're familiar with, like Zillow and Realtor.com. So as soon as you have decided on that open house and when you're going to do it, you know, the day and time, you want to get that scheduled as soon as you can in the MLS. Oh, did it? Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I don't know if the microphone got that, but Zillow apparently did stop syndicating from the MLS, so the listing agent will need to go into their Zillow account and add that, schedule that in Zillow. But as far as like Realtor.com or like Homes.com, all of those will syndicate. So if you're not the listing agent, you really need to make sure you check that they actually did that and they put it in the MLS. It's happened many times to me where I'm sitting for an hour in the open house and I don't know why anybody's not showing up. And I look online and they never put it online, right? They never scheduled it. So as an example of that, you know, if you're doing a Saturday open house, I would want it scheduled online on Monday, right? Beginning of the week, so people who are planning their weekend can schedule that. Just make sure it's put in there. For social media, I love the Realty One Group OneSuite. It's the native app that we have here. So all of my flyers for social media and my posts, I'm going to do in that creative OneSuite. I think it's terrific to put these online. I love putting my open houses in Facebook open house groups. So there's a couple different groups I put them in. They'll have, you know, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 members in them. So you'll just post these flyers all over. If you are doing an open house for another agent, just make sure that you are, any posts or flyers you're doing are reviewed by them. Some offices might have requirements for like their logo to be on there. I have misspelled people's names, and I once used, there was an agent I was doing an open house for, and I can't remember who it was, but she had some generic name. It was like, you know, I don't know, Sue Ann or something. And so I looked her up and I pulled her picture and all her information from online, and there was 2 realtors named Sue Ann in Colorado Springs. So I pulled the wrong one, and she's like, "Who's that?" You know, like, so just make sure that you're getting them reviewed by the listing agent if you're not the listing agent. Because we are human and we make mistakes. And I think this is a great way to brand yourself. You know, these look super clean, they look super great. So get known for doing open houses. You know, people will wait for your postings on Facebook, you know, to figure out what open houses you're doing. So miscellaneous things, you know, you want to do is that before the open house, you need to learn everything about the house. So when people come in, you can answer their questions. So, you know, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, how many square feet, when was it built, you know, what's it close to. I love driving the neighborhood beforehand and then looking at the map, kind of like I did, to plan out where I'm going to put the signs. And then I pack everything up in my car the day before so I can just, you know, wake up in the morning and head over. I also love doing open houses with a partner. So if they're really, really busy, you're going to have people coming in and walking past you and looking at the house. So if you have a lender you like to work with, lenders love doing open houses. You know, they're also looking for buyer leads. And if someone walks in and wants to buy the house, the lender is going to get, you know, maybe a deal from that. Other realtors also can split an open house, right? You just need to make sure that you have a discussion with them about how you're going to split leads as far as like people coming in. But yeah, I love doing open houses with realtors. And once you do enough open houses, you'll start to learn which houses are going to be so busy that you need a partner. Like I could look at a listing today and look at the price and look at the house and the offering, and I could probably determine how busy that open house is going to be just by looking at it because I've done so many of them. So when you have a busy house, I want a partner to do that with me. And then also when you have two pairs of hands, cleaning up and tearing down and setting up everything is not fun, especially when the weather's not great. So having two people will make it go twice as fast. So would recommend you do that. Luxury open houses, in full disclosure, I think I've done 3. So I'm maybe not the most versed in these, but they're the exact same process as doing an open house on a normal house, right? That's not expensive, but you're going to want to do a couple things to make sure that it goes smoothly and that the house is safe, right? If it's a $2 million house. So what we've done in the past is like themed open houses. So margaritas and tacos was a Cinco de Mayo open house idea. Some people do champagne. Broker opens are another great one, so holding an open house for other realtors. You could also do a vendor, right? So if you have a really expensive house you just listed, maybe you hire a coffee truck to sit out front and serve coffee while you're meeting people in the neighborhood, right? My advice on these is that plan to spend some serious money if you do decide to do that, especially with vendors. I think when we did a coffee truck, it was like $1,200. It was really expensive. And they charged us, I don't remember how they charged it. There was a flat fee and then we paid per cup. But it's also part of your value proposition. If you're competing, say, for a very expensive listing, you could offer to do this extravagant open house to bring more exposure to the house. And yeah, I don't know. I think that just being creative with it and putting a little bit more effort into it is a really good idea. And then with the luxury open houses, you definitely want to have at least one partner, if not more. Whenever there's a house with maybe expensive things in it, any house really, but particularly houses with expensive things in it, I don't feel comfortable with people just walking through it. I want to show them around. So if you have, say, 2 realtors and a lender there, you can just walk people through the house and make sure that there's no funny business. So in terms of items, there's a couple essential things that I want with me while I'm doing the open house. A sign-in sheet is like the most important thing you could do. I use a sign-in iPad, and I forgot it today. I was going to show you the app I have, but some way to capture people's information when they walk in the house. And it's a super easy conversation. People get all worried about that, but someone walks in the house and, hey, thanks for coming. My seller just wants people to sign in so we know who's been in the house. Would you mind filling out this form? Super easy. So this will give you some protection too. You'll know who's been in the house if there's any issues. I've never had an issue, but just in case. But then also this is how you're going to follow up with people. And the majority of the time, the real money is going to be in the follow-up, right? So making sure that we capture that information somewhere is important. This should be water bottles, plural. I go get bottled water from Costco and I keep it at my house. But in terms of things people take from an open house, water bottles are the best. People take water bottles all the time. So make sure you keep those in your open house. I'm a big believer in music in open houses. We'll go through this later. I actually have a couple cheap Bluetooth speakers and I put one on every single floor of the house because awkward silences are not fun. So when you're talking with people, you don't want there to be this gap where you can hear like the floorboards creaking and all that. I love keeping, MLS sheets, flyers, and business cards. So I'll just print the consumer MLS sheet from the MLS. I'll quick whip up a flyer on OneSuite with all the information for people to grab, and then I'll keep my business cards there too. If you're gonna do snacks, I would recommend getting something pre-packaged. So if you get a tin of cookies, most people don't like grabbing loose things like cookies from my experience. But if there's a thing of Chips Ahoy and it's sealed, I think people are more comfortable with that. So I'll usually keep this like basket in my car that I'll just refill with snacks and candies and other things. And then also, this is great because if nobody's there, you can just eat, and then that's fun. And then also, I always keep stuff to do if you're bored while you're sitting there. So you can do a terrific job, and it can be a great house, and you can market it, and you can put the signs up. but there could be a 30 or 40 minute, block where nobody comes in. So I keep my Kindle with me. I keep a book of leads, so if I have people to follow up with, I'll just make some calls while I'm waiting. If you can get the Wi-Fi password from the sellers, that's the best situation. If not, I just use a hotspot on my phone.
Question for you.
Yes.
So I tried, I think the last time you did this class, you talked about having speakers on multiple levels when you've got
Yep.
2 or 3-story homes. I tried to order some things off of Amazon for that, and when they came in,
Really?
they didn't talk to each other. So
Mm.
do you have a recommendation?
I will have to look up. Yes, I do. In full disclosure, so mine, the ones that I use, they're Apple branded. So how it syncs together is the Apple home hub. I don't know what that's called. So I'm happy to show you which ones those are because they all sync together.
Again, I loved a lot of your recommendations
Yeah.
last time you taught, and I tried to implement several of them, and got to the first open house, and I couldn't get the 2 speakers
To talk to each other.
set to talk to each other.
Yeah. It's you just got to find ones that'll talk to each other. And then the only issue I have with mine is that there's a slight latency issue. So if you put them next to each other, one might be a little bit off from the other. So you just need to make sure they're far enough that there's no overlap, right? So what's that? Bluetooth speakers. Yeah, so I do one on each floor, but then I'll put them in a bedroom so that if you're standing in say the hallway, you don't hear both, right? So, but yeah, I'll find the ones that I think it's on my Amazon or something. Okay, so this is my open house script, and I didn't write it. I was part of a coaching program called the Brian Casella coaching program. So I didn't write this, I just took it. But the first thing, I forgot to put it in the order here. Someone walks in, I say, how you're doing today? How's your day going? You enjoying the day? Maybe make some small talk about the weather, it's a beautiful day out. But then the first question I ask is, how did you hear about the open house? And why I do that is if they say, oh, my realtor sent it to me, that's gonna change my conversation, right? If they have a real estate agent already. But usually then they'll say, I saw the signs or I saw it on realtor.com. And then that's super easy, right? I'm like, okay, game time. Someone's here. They like the open house. That's it. So if they don't say they have a realtor, my next question is, how long have you been looking for a property, right? Again, they could have said, we drove by and we saw the signs, but they could be represented already by another real estate agent. So asking how long have you been looking for a property will give you a couple answers as far as their motivation, but also they could say, oh yeah, my realtor's been sending me stuff for a year and we haven't found anything, right? So that would be my second question. My third one would be, do you own in the area or rent in the area? So if they're super short, I want to keep prying and figuring out, more about them. So knowing if they own or rent will give me kind of a metric. If they're renting, they might be looking to buy. If they own, they could be downsizing, they could be upsizing. We don't know. And then from there, I do ask what area. So if they're, super close by, they could just be a neighbor, right? My next question would be, if you were going to buy, describe what would be the perfect house for you. And I might rephrase that. But then from there, I can kind of compare that to the house and see if there's any overlap in being, we're looking for a 3-bedroom. Well, perfect. You're standing in a 3-bedroom. Great. Let's talk about it. Then the next question: have you written any offers? So if they're looking and we know that they saw a sign, but they haven't written any offers, we're beating around the bush about asking if they have a real estate agent already, right? Then my next question would be price range and then area. So just figuring out, more questions, probing kind of what they're looking for. But usually by the first question or two, you'll determine, where they're at with everything. If they're looking to go tomorrow, if they have a real estate agent, if they're casually looking, and then you can kind of cater the conversation from there. My goal is to either set an appointment or get a commitment to stay in touch. So if someone comes in and they say to me, we saw the signs, we live just down the street, we were just curious, what the house is going for. They're not looking to sell at this point. my goal is to be like, okay, well, I understand that you're maybe not looking today to make a move, but if you ever were to make a move, do you have a real estate agent that you like to work with, right? Can we stay in touch? It's super easy to get that commitment. And then from there, you already have their information because you had them sign in, and you'll put them in your CRM, you'll follow up with them. But if somebody does come in, which does happen, and they say, we need to buy something in the next couple months, we don't have an agent, we don't know what to do, my goal is to set an in-person appointment in the office as soon as I can, and then go from there, finding them a house to buy, right? So those are your two goals through people coming in the open house. Then the second one here I have is that this script is, I think, really funny. But if you are doing any sort of marketing through door knocking or cold calling, the client made me do it script is really funny. So if you have a seller and you're doing an open house for them, you can walk around and say, hey, my seller made me go door to door. We're just looking to see if you know anybody that might be looking to move in the area. It might be true, it might not. You can dress it up, but I think that's a super easy way to start a conversation, is blaming someone else. I think it's ethical, so we'll keep it. And then the coaching program I was in, they had an agent in there who grossed $2.6 million in commission. And the only thing he did was door knocking. He was outside of Miami in Florida, but he farmed like 8,000 houses, and then he would go and he'd hit every single house once a year with this script. So he'd do 8,000 houses a year, and he completely had farmed that area, right? I think it's a great script. It's fun, but it's good. So this is in the sheet that I handed out, and I apologize, the stapling was not super terrific, but I like plans, and I like having everything set out for me so I don't miss anything. So this would be like my ideal schedule for my week if I was going to do an open house on the weekend. So we'll just go through it real quick, what every single day the tasks would be. So I find a house that I want to do an open house for probably beginning of the week on Monday. So on Monday, I'm going to say, hey, Carrie, I'm going to do an open house for you on that address. We'll work together. We'll find a time and a date. We'll coordinate that with the sellers. I'll make sure that it's scheduled in the MLS. If it's a coming soon campaign, you can't schedule the open house until it's listed for sale. So you'll just work with the listing agent or with yourself to figure out what day it will be posted online. Then from there, on Monday, I want to solidify the lender or the partner that I'm going to have too. So I'll say, hey, Nicole, let's do the open house together on Saturday, and I'll make sure she knows what time to be there and everything's scheduled. Then I'll also put the rest of this in my calendar just so I know what activities I have to do later in the week. I will schedule all the doors and the calling and all the advertising and marketing and prospecting with the other agents. So if we're going to do door knocking, I want to do that with the other agent I'm hosting the open house with. And then the app I use is called One Home, but I also, on that first Monday, I'll create the app event in my open house app on my iPad. Again, that's called One Home, and that's the sign-in sheet. I'll put all the pictures in there, all the property descriptions, all of that. And the app I use is pretty cool because once someone signs in, I can just send them that flyer via email and text once it's all in there. So Tuesday, the day passes, it's Tuesday. On Tuesday, I would be running the geographic ads, so the marketing online if I was going to do that. A lot of the time, say it's a new listing, you might not have pictures by Tuesday, so play it by ear. But if you're going to do anything with paid advertising online, I would want to do it earlier in the week. But that's it for Tuesday, easy day. Wednesday, I would create the flyers in OneSuite, so that's the Realty One Group app. So Wednesday, I'd create the flyers, and then I'd also print everything too on Wednesday, so it's ready to go. So that would be your MLS sheets, your flyers, make sure you have business cards. Then Thursday, it's a couple days out from the weekend, so a couple days before. If it's close to me, say within 20 minutes, I'm gonna go drive that neighborhood and figure out where I can put signs and how many signs I can put. I'll start looking at the map, right, like I did earlier, and I'll say, okay, this house is off of Briargate Parkway, let's see if we can get signs all the way out to Briargate. But I'll just quick go drive by the house and determine the number of signs. If the house is vacant, I'll go walk through the house too, so I know exactly what the floor plan is like and what other things are there, so it's not surprising on Saturday. If we're doing door knocking, I want to do that on Thursday. It's close enough to the weekend so people won't forget, but not so early that they're like, well, it's 5 days out, why are you on my doorstep? So if we're gonna door knock, it'll probably be in the morning on Thursday, and then you can combine it with the walkthrough in the neighborhood. Thursday, I also will post everything on Facebook. So I do have those, I can pull those up too, those Facebook groups that I post in. But I'll just post the flyers that I created in OneSuite online. And then I'll also make a post on Facebook on Thursday. Then Friday, the day before the open house, will be a busy day. So we'll call everybody in the neighborhood. We'll circle prospect if we decide to do that. I'll pack everything from the office and from home. I have an open house box that I keep in my storage room that has all of my supplies in it. I print a map, so I'll go back and I'll print that Google map of the open house area, and then I'll make marks on the map where I put the signs so I don't forget any of them. Because when you have 30 signs out, it's easy to leave them there. Ask me how I know. Then I'll check my packing list and make sure that I have everything. I'll triple check it was posted on the MLS on Friday. Again, it's the worst when you show up and it wasn't even put online. Then I'll block 10 minutes to learn the house if I didn't do it earlier. We're going to drive the neighborhood earlier and determine and walk the house and see all the numbers. But I do want to learn the house before I show up. So I'll block 10 minutes to just learn bedroom, bathroom, builder, floor plan, square footage, all of that. And then optionally, you could do a neighborhood preview on a Friday. Some agents like to do that. That would be like if you were to door knock, you would say, hey, we're doing a neighbor-only preview Friday night. We'd love to see you, right? Then on Saturday, this will be your open house day, and it could be Sunday too. So I will plan, about an hour to put up signs and to prepare the house, depending again on what I determine the day or two before. I'll just post about it on social media, maybe on my story. I'll mark all the signs on that map that I printed the day before, and I'll mark with the quantity too. So if I put 3 signs in this intersection, I need to go pick up 3 signs, right? I'll time block everything for driving and the sign setup, and I'll do that about an hour before. And then here's what I think is the key, is that as soon as I pack up the open house, I drive to the office or to my house, and then I call everybody that signed in, right? So if the open house ends, say 1 or 2 o'clock, by 3 o'clock I've eaten and my blood sugar's up and I'm in a better mood. And then I'll go here and I'll call everybody that was there, right? And then also that same day, just so I don't forget, I'll add them all to my CRM. I'll add them to my email list. I'll add them to any follow-up plans that I have just to make sure that I'm not missing any opportunities on the follow-up, right? And then Sunday will just be the same day. If you're doing a 2-day open house, you're just going to do all those same tasks on Saturday and Sunday, right? But I think the key here is going to be that follow-up, 3 to 5 o'clock. And it's a super easy conversation. Thanks for stopping by the open house. Is there anything I can do for you? Like, that's it. So in this plan too, I do have a 2-week plan. So this is week 1, then this is week 2. It's very similar. If I'm going to do a luxury listing, I'll use this plan. Or if, say, I have my own listing coming up, I know about it 2 weeks in advance, I'll just push everything a little bit further to get more exposure on it. So I don't know if we'll go line by line on this one, but it's pretty much the same thing. We're going to determine the day and the time, and we'll schedule it. We'll get a partner. We'll time block everything. But then Tuesday here, we're also going to solidify, if we're going to do a food truck or vendors, we're going to solidify that, say, 2 weeks in advance. We'll schedule all the mailers if we're going to pay for mailers. We just need to make sure that this is all done far in advance if it's going to be a big ordeal, right? You'll also want to determine if there's special showing instructions. So if it is a nice house and say they have, I don't know what nice people have in their house, like a movie theater, right? And they say nobody's allowed in the movie theater. How are we going to block that out? How are we going to make sure, everything's clean and kept well? But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. We are going to be prospecting the neighborhood earlier for this plan, and then we'll do it again the week of. So in how I do it is that we're going to actually prospect a week prior and then 2 weeks prior. And then it's pretty much the same thing, right? All those same tasks are there, except we'll have things like the mailers will be delivered earlier. Yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you mentioned sign-ins. I know there's a couple different alternatives. I know Laura mentioned she uses a sign-in on listings to leads on her iPad.
Yep.
I actually want to talk to Michael Escobar and see if he
Yeah.
can create something on the website, property website, because I've been sharing with them a lot of different ways
Yeah.
of using those websites now in
Sure.
marketing a property. But what are you using for sign-in?
Yeah, so sign-in sheets. I think that the method for them is far less important than actually having one. So even if your sign-in sheet is just a piece of paper that you write sign-in sheet at the top and then you have name, phone number, email address, that works great. It's better than not having one. So I use an app on my iPad, and it's called One Home. And why I really like it is that it doesn't require cell service. So if I'm in a house that doesn't have service or Wi-Fi, it's all just on my iPad. So that's what I use. It's an iPad. No, so it's a third-party app, and so how it works, and I really wish I brought my iPad, but it has a template, and so you'll upload a picture of the house, you'll copy the description in from the MLS, you'll just copy paste it. It'll let you put in, bedrooms, bathrooms, all of that stuff into the app. And then in the app too, you can change the questions and reword them. So I always have name, phone number, email address, and then how did you hear about the open house? And it's a multi-question thing. So Realtor, Zillow online, right? Signs, all that. So it's super easy. I like keeping it really easy just because there's already a little bit of a barrier to doing that for some people. Some people will be like, I'm not signing in. And I say, well, I'm sorry, then you can't come by the open house, sorry. So I try to make it really easy and simple. I use an app on my iPad, it's called One Home. You can find, quick printouts of sign-in sheets online. There's websites you can use, and I did use the websites, but then the issue becomes if you are at a house with no cell service or Wi-Fi, then you don't have a sign-in sheet. So hopefully that answers your question. So, yeah, of course. Yes, Jay.
I've had in the past open houses, and I don't blame you for doing this. BS information.
Happens all the time.
So, do you find it useful to have some kind of offer for like $25 gift card to Starbucks or $25?
Yeah.
That way you can actually contact them if they win.
Uh-huh.
That way they're more true to their.
Yeah. So the question for people online was, do I put any sort of incentive to have people sign in? So like a gift card offering. I have in the past, but then what I find is that people will give their information just for the sake of getting that item, right? So will you get better information and more of it? Probably. So, I think it would be a good investment to do that. But with the amount of open houses that I'll do in a busy season, it's not, financially smart to do, say, a $25 gift card twice a weekend, every single weekend. So yeah, I wouldn't discourage it. Maybe for a nicer house, say something pushing $800, $900, $1 million, maybe we do something like that, but I don't generally. You'll always get people that put in bogus information. You'll have people that say, I don't want to give you my information, you're going to call me. And so what I'll say is, okay, well, we won't call you if you don't want me to. We're just trying to help, right? So it's a volume game. You'll get people's information that's bad all the time. You just have to do more, more open houses and get more pieces of information, right? Yeah, hopefully that helps. I don't know. So I keep a packing checklist just because I forget things. And so I grabbed this out of my car. So this stays in my car. So I was just going to I thought it'd be fun to just show you what stays in my car. So this is my thing I keep for showings and for open houses. And so it just has a bunch of things that I might like need while I'm out during the day. So there's a first aid kit. I'm gonna make a whole big mess. I keep multi-purpose cleaner because you'll have dirty things in your open houses. This one needs no explanation. Trust me, you'll be up in the mountains showing houses and someone's kid will need to use the bathroom and there's no toilet paper, and so then it's a whole big thing. So paper towels too. I keep a tool kit too, so this just has, everything from sockets to, I don't know, everything else. I've put, door handles back on before the showings. I've put closet door, aligned things. I have tape because you can tape things with it. I keep a window scraper for my car, and actually I keep two, so that's great. I keep a portable jump charger, so this is a battery, and then it has a jump charger, and I've used it several times. I've actually jumped people's cars as they're leaving the open house. They'll be leaving the open house, and they'll be like, hey, my car won't start. Do you have a jumper cable? Yes, I do. I keep sunscreen because I'm a redhead. This is a fresh spring morning from Bath and Body Works, so you guys can smell that. There's some stinky ones, yeah. And I think that no smell is better than some smell, but this smell is better than like dog or cat. There's a whole bunch of little things. I keep garbage bags. There's more first aid kits. There's more sunscreen, earplugs, pens, hardware. I am ready to be a parent. Yes, I'm prepared. I am prepared. And there's more stuff too. Like I keep. Oh, sorry, I clicked things. I keep it a change of clothes because usually I'm leaving the house and I'm driving and I have coffee, and then I hit a speed bump and then it goes all over me. So it happens about once a week, so I keep extra clothes in my car to prepare for that. But yeah, this just stays in my car all the time. It just is in my trunk. Oh, my tape. And yeah, so that stays in my car, and then this is my my bin. So I have like a wicker basket that I got from like Marshall's or something. And so I'll keep like foot booties in there. I have a little folder. I'll put the MLS sheets and all the other paper in there. I'll grab my Bluetooth speakers, business cards, water bottles, the snacks, my sign-in sheet / an iPad, flyers, my laptop, the work bag, call list or things to do, like a book. Kelly, what are you doing? Tried to close it. I will also keep a mallet. So we were talking earlier about putting things into the ground. Sorry, this is a very distractable class. Yeah, they always are. So the mallet actually usually is in this what's it called? Bag. We're gonna need to get that off the screen. Yeah, so the mallet usually actually stays in this bag, but when you're putting those little crappy signs in the ground, if the ground's frozen, they're really hard to get in. So I actually keep this like 12-inch like stake in my bag. And then if I can't get the sign in, you don't want to force it in because it's going to bend the bottom, right? So you just mallet that in the ground and pull it out, and then there's a hole for it. I will bring a chair if I know the house is vacant or if it's not staged. Signs and flags, obviously, and then pepper spray just in case, or something else. A big stick would be great. So yeah, that's it. I'll just go through this like the day before and make sure it's all in my car. And then when I wake up, it's just getting in the car and getting some coffee and calling it good. And yeah, the only other thing I had is that like the reality is that the majority of people coming in are not going to be ready to buy or sell a house when they come in. So the secret is to follow up with them, right? I've mentioned I go right to the office or right to my house and I call everybody who showed up and put them in my CRM that day so I don't forget. And then it's just staying in touch, making a relationship. The scripts I use in the conversations are the exact same that I use for my prospecting class, so all of that is online. But yeah, my goal is just to set an appointment in person as soon as possible and just make a relationship, get to know them, get to know their family. If they have kids, make a note, pets, all that. So that's it. I don't know. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah? Cool. Thank you. Is there any questions about my open house? Yes?
Tips on securing the house, securing yourself while you're doing the open house?
Have more than one person there. Yeah, so I would say, the truth is that I'm a guy, and so the reality is that, statistically, it's not a very dangerous thing for me to be in a vacant house by myself. But I do think that having more than one person is the best way to stay safe. And then when you're leaving and you lock up the house, always check windows too, because sometimes people will walk through the house, and if you're not with them, they'll unlock a window, and then when you leave, they'll open the window and jump in the house, right? So check windows and doors, but yeah, the best thing I would say is to get a partner to do it with. I don't think I've ever felt unsafe at an open house. I'm a guy, but I don't think there's ever been a situation where anybody's came in that made me uncomfortable, either by myself or with a partner.
And how much free rein do you give people coming into the house to kind of go upstairs while you're downstairs?
Yeah, I do. I genuinely will keep a loose tether on people if I have a partner. So if it's just me and it's a small house, I might let people walk through by themselves if it's vacant. But I usually want to be within, a little bit just to make sure they're not, jumping on the beds or looking in drawers or anything.
So if you had a partner with you and you had a two-story or even three-story, you typically have one of the partners.
Yeah, so what I would ideally do is that one person would just go through them and show them around. So say I was with another realtor, a family comes in, me or them, we would just walk them through. So be like, okay, here's the kitchen. I don't know if you guys like to cook. Here's this beautiful stovetop, right? And then I would just kind of tour them around, is how I would do it. Exactly. I would just treat it, I would talk to them exactly like they were a client and I was showing them the house. But I do that's, that can be a little bit overbearing. So I will let them, of course, I will stay in the hallway. I'll let them go in the bedroom. I won't go in the bedroom myself, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a loose tether.
And a rule of thumb I always have for myself has been to always keep yourself between the client and the door.
Yeah.
And never box yourself in the driveway.
Yeah, keep yourself between the client and the door. Never box yourself in is a good point. Yeah.
So I did have a question too.
Sure.
When you talked about canvassing the neighborhood.
Yep.
You talked about door knocking. You talked about calling. Do you do your traditional phone call, or are you even more like a slide broadcast or voicemail?
No, so I do generally not leave pre-recorded voicemails for open house invites. So my process for that is exactly like how I would circle prospect any area. It's just getting to know them. And so my exact dialogue would be, hey, I'm hosting an open house for your neighbors. They're selling their house. It's at this address at this time. Do you guys think you're interested in making it, or you're interested in coming? It's really that easy. And then if they say yes, I'll text them the information. But no, it's not some sly, slick, like, would you like to buy this house? No, it's no commercial or anything like that. There's no gotchas, right? So that's how I do it. And it's the same script with door knocking too. So I'll have a flyer. I'll knock on the door. Hey, I'm hosting an open house for your neighbor, the Browns. They're selling their house. We're trying to get it sold. Here's the information. You guys think you're interested in making it this weekend? So yeah, that's how I do it. It's super easy. And usually we go talk about other things if they're talkative, right? So I like to give it space to kind of talk about the weather or anything like that. Yep. Sweet. Any other questions about my open houses? Cool. All right. Well, you're welcome. Hopefully that was informative.